finishing touches on my poor mother now. Long ago and now I'm waiting on my dear brother, 'cause I sure need the dough. Gotta order a few more boxes from Kalamazoo. Gotta get a man in here to put the organ in tune. I've got to learn a few new Jesus jingles. The act is getting old. I've gotta keep up on the latest things or I'm out in the cold. Just a few more really big jobs and I'll retire. Gonna finally get around to forming that barbershop choir. And when my time comes, if I have my way, I've a friend in LA who promises he'll toss me in the sea. But in the meantime,
folks, welcome back inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show on Power Talk 1210 AM KEVT, Sahuarita, Tucson. Thank you so much for making us part of the program today. Already we've heard from Yumir Diodato, and we just heard from George Porter Jr., the bass player from the Meters. And now it is my honor to bring in a friend of the program, a great drummer, and an amazing human being, Jim Keltner. Welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hi, Jake.
How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I was very, very, it was very nice being able to hear George's voice.
I know he's still doing it, and you know, as an accompanist, somebody who's he talked a lot about you know, just trying to fit in, and I think he's also pressing, you know, talking about being part of a team, you know, because as you know, bands were able to really were able to stay together for a long time and cultivate their sound and their spirit. So yeah, it was a treat, you know.
Well, what a team he was with, or he's been with all these years. My God, you know, doesn't get any better than that.
Did you I know the track we led into was a track called The Experiment off an album Pete McCabe, The Man Who Ate the Plant. And the only reason that was from 1973, Jim Keltner on drums. How many times did you play with Chuck Rainey? Because Rainey played bass on that.
Really?
Yeah.
So Chuck and I played on that?
Chuck and Larry Knechtel. Yeah, this is a weird, I mean, The Man Who Ate the Plant, you can go off and figure out whether they were talking about peyote.
That actually does sound very familiar now, the title. But
it's okay. It was, what I like about it is it's just cool because it had a swing element to it in the middle of that song, which was great. What work stands out with you and Chuck?
Well, you know, the obvious one is was Josie, was Steely Dan, because for many reasons, because he was sitting right next to me in this little studio producer's workshop. You know, nowadays everybody's, you know, quite a few feet apart, and either that or you're behind baffles. Well, we were behind baffles in those days too a lot, but this particular recording, the room was filled with players, and Chuck was sitting right next to me. He was right by my hi-hat, and I don't know where his amp was exactly, but you know, sitting there next to him all day long was fantastic. He's just he's one of my favorite people. Always been one of my favorite people. Interesting and funny.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, what a musician. I mean, the things I would always want to ask him about, you know, the stuff he and Purdy did, all the history he made, you know.
Did you when you were on the road with Gary Lewis or with Delaney and Bonnie, did you ever cross paths when he was playing with King Curtis?
No, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't with Delaney and Bonnie that long, unfortunately. But I did see them play live at I think this is terrible for me not to remember this stuff. I think it was a club called the Coconut Grove, or it used to be the Coconut Grove, and then they called it something else. Anyway, I think it was a televised thing. and I cannot remember why I was there, but I remember distinctly watching them and being thrilled at seeing them live. And the worst part about what I can't remember is I don't know who the artist was.
Well, okay, so listen.
But it might have been, I mean, if it had been Aretha, I would have remembered. So I don't know. Maybe they were the backing, part of a backing band for something. But whatever it was, Chuck and Bernard both had tuxedos on, and they looked smashing, and they played like,
Well, going back for a minute, what is your take on Becker and Fagin? Because, like, you talked about Josie, which is just a phenomenal tune, but that album, Asia, which, by the way, my second daughter is named after that title track, I mean, Gad told the story. I mean, they had already worked through about 3 dozen drummers, and Harvey Mason, all these guys, and it just finally Gad came in. I think they did 2 takes, and they finally got it. But what was your experience with Fagin and Becker?
Well, my experience with them was I didn't know who they were at the time. I wasn't aware that Jeffrey, my little brother Jeff Beccaro, had already had experiences with them playing on records. I wasn't aware of the Jim Gordon track that he'd played on. For some reason, they just weren't on my radar, and so it was just another session really for me. Except that the thing that once I got there and I saw everybody there, I said, "Oh, well, this is I saw all the guys." And I thought, well, this is going to be good, whatever it's going to be. And the thing that I remember most is that Donald would walk around the room while we were playing, and he would come by to a guitar player, and he'd point and he'd be talking. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but he was obviously telling them something about the chart. And he made his way over to me, and he leaned in and said, "Open the hi-hat on the end of 2 or the end of 3 or whatever it was, in bar 63 and bar I don't know, it was." And so I thought, oh no, I'm going to have to actually read the chart, because it was looking like I could kind of skim through, and because it was a really long, they didn't he because he wanted to make little marks in different verses and so forth, he didn't do the one-page thing with lots of repeats. So every sheet was there. It was like 7 sheets, I think, as I recall. 6, or maybe I'm exaggerating now, 5 or 6 sheets, something like that. And those were the days when I had really great eyesight, so they were sticking out there, hanging out there in front of the drum set. But I made my marks, and then I had to start zeroing in on the chart. And I remember that really. I remember that was a big deal for me. I'd never seen anybody walk around the room and tell everybody like that. It was usually an arranger standing on sort of a little podium, and he would stop, and then he would tell whoever he wanted to do this, make your change there on the chart, whatever, and then we'd start up again. But Donald was doing this as we were playing. I thought that was really cool. And then, like years later, I remember thinking, because Chuck Rainey always had said to me, and probably told a lot of other people the same thing, that he didn't like the feel on Josie. He didn't like the groove on it. And so he said the only time it grooves is during this little 2-bar thing here where Donald had me playing double time hi-hat. He said, double up on the hi-hat, chicka, 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 16ths on the hi-hat,
Sure, yeah.
just for these 2 bars. And it happened, I don't know, several times in the song. And Chuck would say, that's the only time the song grooves. And I agreed. I remember agreeing with him because it had a funny had a funny, like not a lope. It was a weird. It's just kind of a stiff, kind of almost a stiff kind of groove, and it was due to my drum part, and I thought later on, I thought, okay, I know why that happened. Is because once I had to start reading the chart, I wasn't paying attention to the groove as much. I was just trying to make sure I knew where I was for everything coming up, and so I always. I used that as a lesson for later on. I worked on that for later on. I never wanted to get to the point where a chart, of music was going to interfere with the feel for me. I never. That was a big lesson for me, and so I have Chuck Rainey to thank for that. As the years have gone by, I've realized that I like that little groove now. I like it, actually. I know what Chuck was talking about.
Sure.
But I like the feel of it.
Would you say that was
odd? It's an odd song, and that's the reason why I think they chose me to play on it. There had been 2 or 3 other drummers playing on it because there were all kinds of pencil marks on my chart. I had to erase a bunch of it, and I asked. I think I remember asking who played on it, and I wasn't told, and that was a good thing. I didn't want to know. I don't need to know. So
I'm just amazed that that they were not, not even turning on the dial, freeform radio and hearing Steely. You didn't even know who they were.
No, I didn't. I say that I knew the name Steely Dan, but I didn't know their music. I didn't know the songs. I didn't know anything about them personally, So what happened was after that date, I moved on, and then one day in the hallways at one of the studios, Jeffrey came running up to me. He said, "Jimmy, Josie." He's pointing his finger at me, going, "Josie," and I said, "What do you mean?" And then I realized. It just hit me because then the title, I remembered the title. I said, "Oh," and he goes, "Steely," and he was talking about how much he liked it and how much he loved the whole record and everything. And for him to tell me how much he loved my playing on something was the world for me, Anybody could tell me they love something, but when Jeffrey would say he loved something that I played on, it really meant a great deal to me. And so that's when we had the conversation about Steely Dan, and he told me, the records he played on, and then I became like a fan like everybody else of Steely Dan. Those guys at the time were doing some incredible stuff, and Asia was really, I think it was kind of groundbreaking in that it was all live, and the music was jazz inflected. It had a flavor of jazz because of Donald's intense love for jazz, and he was able to put that in a pop context and make it really work in a beautiful way. I think I thought that record was fantastic. And I was hoping that there would be more like that, with not just me on it, and not because I wanted to play on it, because I wanted to hear all the other people that would have loved the opportunity to be a part of that kind of music with those guys. Donald was amazing. Donald was just brilliant in the studio.
It's interesting.
And then of course, and I can't leave Gary Katz out. Gary was a beautiful producer for them, a beautiful cat, and a great foil for them.
One for the audience. One reason I I love doing the show is I started off interviewing a lot of mercurial, sort of below the radar jazzers like Henry the Skipper Franklin, and on and on and on and on. So many guys I can't even. Jimmy Owens, East Coast, West Coast, Gerald Wilson. And I come to find out that these prodigious studio drummers who, were just, taking on all sorts of work in different forms, actually grew up when jazz was popular music. And turns out Keltner, Jim Keltner, wasn't just a fanatic and wasn't just somebody who played jazz live, but actually was on record playing some serious burning music. And we're about to play a tune right now. Jim, I want you to settle in for about a few minutes here. I'm going to listen to this. We'll come back and talk about it.
Okay.
Music on the Jake Feinberg Show, sponsored in part by the Stereo Hospital, Circle Tree Ranch, Dee's Island Grill. Thank you so much for allowing us to do this program. Mr. Keltner, what do you got for us, brother?
First of all, it's the phone, so I can't tell what's going on exactly. But
I know.
Who was that?
What instrument?
Well, was it? It wasn't Bill Plummer, was it?
No, that was on saxophone, Gary Foster. On piano, Claire Fisher. On bass, Bobby West. On drums, Jim Keltner.
Well, man, how come I've never heard that before?
Because I'm sending you the album right. I'm mailing it to you, man. That track.
I can't even.
You're playing way out.
Except the bass. Bobby West. That's amazing. Bobby West was maybe the only guy that ever gave Albert Stinson actual lessons, as far as I can remember.
Really?
Yeah, but Albert, Albert was my best friend.
We talked.
In life,
we talked about him last time. Yeah, no, Bobby gave him lessons.
Yeah, Bobby. Yeah, not very many, I don't think, but he studied, and I think Bobby was a car race driver, right? I mean, I hope he's still around, Bobby.
Yeah, I don't. I
don't want to be talking about him in the past tense,
mm-hmm.
but I believe that he was a race driver. What do you call it, a race driver? What am I?
Race car driver, yeah.
Race car driver.
Yeah, that's fine.
And he also played bass on a couple of the big Jackson 5 hits. Isn't it funny? Bobby West, man. And he's playing with Claire Fisher. And I see. This is sad because.
No, it's not sad. It's
sad because I can't remember I know that I did the session, and I think it was Bill. Was Bill Hardy's name attached to that?
I'm looking here. J.W. Hardy.
Okay, that was Bill Hardy.
Bill Hardy, yeah.
So that was his label.
It was
1968. He produced those records, and for some reason, I never got that one. I got something sent to me in the mail.
This is on.
I think he sent me something that I'd played with Albert, with Gary and Claire Fisher.
Well, this
That's
is
what
on.
It was, but I never heard this one.
Revelation Records, 1968. 1 to get ready, 4 to go. You're on
Wow.
You're on 2 tracks. The name of that track was called Freeway. And
Okay, Gary Foster sounds beautiful. I always loved the way Gary, the jazz player that Gary was. Now he's been ensconced in the studio for many years.
I want to talk about your playing. I want to talk.
Wonderful.
I want to talk about your playing because, to me, it's like, it was. I mean, you're just playing the high end of the drum kit, and you're playing it's such free music. It's not, Claire dabbled in bossa nova music and straight ahead jazz. I mean, at that time in 68, 69, Keltner, can you just talk about? I mean, you had not really fully committed to a career in the studios. Can you talk about...
When was that record done?
68.
Okay, so 68, that was... 68 was right before I joined Delaney and Bonnie and Friends. And that was the turning point for me in the studio. I'd already recorded a bunch of stuff.
I guess my question is this. Did Jim before you got into the studio, did you ever consider... to be a leader of a jazz group? Were you a leader of a jazz group?
No, I was not a leader of anything. I couldn't even.
Come on.
No,
all right, yeah, go ahead.
What I was a person who loved jazz more than anything, and that's all I wanted to play, and that's all I listened to, and I wasn't interested in anything else, and especially pop or rock music, and so yeah, I did a big about face. I did a real U-turn there. and I never, when I hear, like I'll have to hear this again, but I never felt like I developed as a jazz player like I wanted to. I was playing, but the brilliant thing about that was that I got to play with all these fantastic jazz people. You know, I got to play with Charles Lloyd, well, once. I got to play with Bobby Hutcherson quite a bit, and I got to play with Albert, my genius friend, who I didn't know was a genius at the time.
Right.
He was just my best friend. I was his tailor, his barber, his paramedic, everything, his banker. But I never, but because I was playing with guys like that, of that caliber, I always felt like, oh man, I'm just never going to get this right somehow. I never felt like I was a real jazz player. I had, my idols were just too huge, Philly Joe, Shelly Manne, by the time I got to Elvin, and Tony later, I was already playing in the studios, and I thought, okay, well, I'll never be able to reach that level. And that's a dumb way to think.
It is. It really is.
To people all the time now that you should never think like that. You should never feel like that. You should never compare yourself in the first place.
Compare yourself to yourself. I mean, only that.
Your competition should be you.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's right.
You should be inspired by other musicians, not intimidated. But as a young guy, that's the way I kind of was, and it's too bad. Did you know Claire? I mean, he's the leader of the album. He called you up and had you drop. I mean, because you played Claire. I think the reason Claire called me for that was because of Gary Foster, and it's really funny that Gary Foster and I, we taught. Gary was a clarinet teacher up on the second floor of Barry and Grassmick Music in Pasadena on Colorado and Lake, and I was the snare drum teacher, and so we worked down the hall from each other, and then also there was a guy named David Lindley, who maybe some of your audience may know.
Sure.
A really incredible, string instrument virtuoso guy, and played every kind of string instruments, but he taught banjo at the other end of the hall. So there was banjo, snare drum, and clarinet going on.
I love it,
there.
man. Dixieland.
Yeah, and that's where I knew Gary, and Gary was just one of the hippest guys at the time that I knew. I loved Gary.
Mm-hmm.
He was very, very, he listened to Lee Konitz and people like that, and Warren Marsh and all, and I wasn't turned on to the Albert actually turned me on to everything that I knew about jazz, and he loved Lee Konitz. In fact, he turned me on to a record that's still one of my favorite records, Lee Konitz, Sonny Dallas and Elvin.
Wow.
It's just I'd never heard Lee Konitz play like that before, and so anyway. But that was Gary Foster in my life. He was so hip and so funny and everything, and he had a great recipe for liver and onions. And
go ahead.
And we used to talk about stuff like that because I was just trying to get healthy.
Yeah.
Which was a joke,
mm-hmm.
basically at that time. But anyway,
you're just trying to sing for your supper.
Claire Fisher, I think.
I was going to say, can you?
And at that time, Claire Fisher, I would see Claire play at Shelley's Manhole with Gene Stone on drums.
Oh boy.
And I forget who was playing bass. Unfortunately, and that's ridiculous that I can't remember who was playing bass. But I loved the way they played with Claire. Gene had such a touch, a beautiful touch.
I was going to say that I keep finding these nuggets. Keltner, at this point, I know Gabby Szabo, Cal Jader, Claire Fisher, and I'm still looking for more jazz, eclectic jazz that Keltner was playing on. Can you, I
can't be that much, really.
Well,
unfortunately.
It's okay. I had a chance to interview Bobby Hutcherson couple months ago, and I didn't realize that you had a chance to gig with him. Can you talk about?
Oh man, Bobby.
Yeah.
Well, Bobby, I knew Bobby really well because we lived in the same neighborhood, and Bobby and I were always saving Albert's life. Last time I saw Bobby he was here in L.A. recording at the studio I work in a lot, and so they called me. No, Don. Actually, it was my buddy Don was producing, and he said, you probably want to get down here. So I went down and just hung out with them while they recorded it. It was really fantastic to hear them all play, and Bobby's just still sounded beautiful. He's wearing that thing in his nose now, for
right, the breathing tube,
the tank, he has to carry around it. But he still sounded so incredible. It's just still one of the great musicians of all time, Bobby, and still beautiful and funny, and we talked about a lot of stuff, and he told me a story, which I can't really.
Did you play with him? It's okay.
There's a story about being at Albert's, because we always would congregate at Albert's house there in Altadena. He lived down in a little cul-de-sac there in a nice little pad, and that's where I spent so much time learning about music, listening to music and stuff, and unfortunately, toward the last few years, Albert would get real careless, and Bobby and I would get the call at 3 or 4 in the morning from his girlfriend. We'd have to run over there and walk him around and keep him up so he didn't.
Right. Right. No, I mean,
but that. So Bobby, that was my relationship with Bobby in the early days, and then just hanging and stuff. But then later, Albert got me on the gig with John Handy, because John's musicians, the great drummer Terry Clark, and the bass player Don Thompson, fantastic rhythm section. They were Canadian guys, and I guess their card had expired or something, and they had to go back. They couldn't work, I guess what it was. They couldn't work legally. So they needed a new rhythm section, and Albert said, well, use this drummer, a friend of mine. And so I got to play at the Both End club called the Both End. I think it was on Divisadero
Oh my
Street
God, I cannot believe it. In Frisco. Oh my God.
And I thought I was in heaven.
I thought you were in heaven, man.
The greatest thing that ever happened to me. I'm up there playing with Bobby Hutcherson, John Handy, Albert Stinson, and I don't know why in the world I can't ever remember the name of the guitar player.
Was it Pat Martino?
No.
Interesting.
Oh man, I don't know why. But yeah, that was a tremendous time for me. And during those days, we would, we'd play the set, and then at the end of the night, when the set was over, the last set was over, guys would come up and sit in. Hampton Hawes would come in and play, it's just astonishing to see that man in person, let alone to hear him play. And then Jack DeJohnette would come and hang out, and I got to be really good friends with Jack during that time. Man, I'd already met Jack, I think, before that. We traded sandals in the parking lot at Huntington Beach at the Golden Bear.
At the Golden Bear, Keltner, could you say that those experiences with Bobby, playing music with real heavy jazz, Afro Blues Quintet, plus one, did you find yourself being able to transcend and be out of body at that? Was that burning music that allowed you to sort of connect with the spirits and
Well, I would love to be able to say all of that and say yeah.
No,
but unfortunately no.
Okay.
Because the Afro Blues Quintet plus one, which I was very fortunate to be a part of at that time, was those guys were all so good, and we weren't playing jazz, but we were we were playing Latin-infused kind of jazz-inflected kind of music, and so it was a tremendous. I always felt frustrated because I knew what I wanted to do with that band. I knew how I wanted to play with that band and move it to heights. I could feel what I wanted to do, and I couldn't do it. And just about the time when I was starting to feel good about the concept of how to play that music with those guys, then I took off and I went in another direction. That was, I think it was '66. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was right on the cusp.
But my good friend Jack Folks is the one that got me in that band, and I think you interviewed Jack.
Oh yeah, Jack was the one that talked about you and him sitting in the front. Which give me the videotape of you and him sitting in the front row of the Dragon Wick, watching Charles Lloyd and.
Oh yeah, we all would go down there and hang out and listen. Charles Lloyd was our champion. He was a monster player, and Charles was, Charles was way ahead of his time actually. Charles was like the closest thing to Miles Davis that Miles is and was always and will always be my main hero for many reasons, but Charles was kind of our Miles Davis in a way. Everything that Charles would say was so profound, and the way he played was he played different. He played different. He wasn't. I don't want to be all jazz snobbish and everything here. I'll just say that he was just he was a really, really interesting player. Always was. Always loved stretching and then he got that band together, that amazing band together with
Peacock, Jarrett, DeJohnette, yep.
No, Cecil McBee.
Oh, Cecil McBee. That's right. Okay.
And
that's Keith Jarrett.
Keith
mm-hmm.
Keith Jarrett and Jack DeJohnette.
Yeah.
And that band was so killer. That band changed my life, changed a lot of us. And so I would go see them everywhere I could. We all did, And and then Charles was so ahead of his time. Charles had huge rock audiences he was playing to.
Right.
And so Charles got a lot of flack for that, which is unfortunate. I remember thinking at the time, that's too bad. Don't they know he's one of the great jazz players? A lot of people did. A lot of people didn't want to. There's probably a lot of who knows what it was. It would cause people to,
well, you're talking. You make because people that were
popular for playing kind of. Well, and they grooved like crazy, man. Jack DeJohnette could easily be one of my favorite rock drummers. Sombrero Sam is
right.
has been my ringtone for many years.
What about Stoneflower? When I interviewed Michael Sharif, he said he really had to work that one out for that drum groove on that track.
Oh yeah, well good luck trying to work any drum track out with anybody, but Jack DeJohnette and Jack just played natural. He just played real natural, and I just I listen to Jack now playing stuff, when he's bebopping. Nobody does it better. Nobody swings harder. I mean, it's unbelievable how Jack can swing. So he just swing you right into and then he can turn around and play little funky grooves like I used to like to hear Billy Higgins. Jack was like Billy on steroids to me when it came to that kind of thing.
Can you explain that?
But anyway, yeah. but the point being that Charles had this band, this incredible band, and it changed a whole lot of people. And then I talked to Charles one time about this, and he told me his story about Miles. I think he said that on an interview too. I think I have so much stuff on Charles. sometimes I get it mixed up with what he told me personally with the stuff that I've heard on tape. Like I have on my computer now, I've digitized a lot of stuff that I had on tapes and various things. And each time I get to like if I'm looking for something, I run across this Charles tape interview with the guy, a jazz writer here in L.A. When I run across that tape, I get stuck there, and I can't stop listening. So I end up listening to the whole thing again.
What was the story he told?
Oh, the story, just all kinds of stories and stuff, and just talking about everything in general, music and all that. And I love how Charles came from Memphis, Tennessee, and played R&B, just like Train did, and all that. And anyway, I think I may have digressed. I forgot what your original question was.
Yeah, but no, we're going to move on. It's fine. Keltner, I wanted you to talk to the audience. I think it's so important. You've been in so many different amalgamations. Could you talk about a time in your life when you, in your career, believe it or not, where you were facing adversity and how you overcame it?
I'll tell you, adversity for me is nothing compared to the adversity to the brilliant people who were my heroes. So I don't have any stories of adversity, really. The adversity in my life was actually funny stuff like an allergy that I developed when we got to California from Oklahoma. I came straight here from Tulsa, Oklahoma with my mom and dad when I was 13. And I was a baseball player back in Tulsa, and that was my passion. And we got out here, and I started breaking out in hives when I would get hot and do things like play baseball or ride my bicycle up a hill or something. And and it was bad. My whole face would swell up, my lips would swell real big, my earlobes would get huge, my eyelids would swell up and close, and I looked like a monster. and so I would go hide, and what happened was, and this is the honest to God truth, I'm telling you the truth, it would be gone in 20, 30 minutes, like it never happened. And one time only that I can remember, I actually passed out, and I was in a barber chair, and the poor barber, he had to have just I can't imagine what it would have been like.
Right.
He's got this young kid in his chair. He's cutting his hair, and suddenly he looks at this kid, and his face is all swollen up. My neck would swell up too, but mostly I just looked crazy with everything swollen up, my eyes swollen shut, and then passed out on top of that. So I don't know. Somehow I ended up on a couch, and they didn't have paramedics in those days, but somebody came and worked on me a little bit, but they didn't see me broken out because it had already passed. It was like a movie monster. It's some kind of B movie monster where he turns into this monster, and 30 minutes later he's back to normal. And that's the honest to God truth. The only other person that knows that and witnesses that is my wife, because she was my girlfriend at the time.
But
I'm
going back.
Anyway, that was a very adverse. That was big adversity in my life because I had to give up sports. I had to give up football. It was too bad. I gave up football, gave up baseball. But fortunately, the good thing that came out of that, because always something good comes out of adversity. Mm-hmm. The good thing that came out of it was that I wanted to play drums. I wanted to play music. And so I had started already in Tulsa a little bit, but then I got serious when I couldn't play baseball anymore or football or anything. I just got serious about music. And so that was a good thing. But that was a terrifically adverse time in my life, I prayed. I remember praying. I prayed. So that might have gotten me real close to God back in those days. That might have been when I got really close to God, because I would pray so heavily. My mom and dad did everything they could for me. They took me to. My dad spent a fortune on allergy doctors just to find out that I wasn't allergic to anything. My mom fixed all kinds of weird concoctions. You know, she's sort of a Mexican lady with a lot of exotic blood, and she would do these things for me, and none of it worked. So it was a time when I was on my own. I was all alone. Like at night, I would lay there and I would think, and I was very depressed, and I would just pray like crazy. I made deals with God. I said, oh, look, I won't do this anymore. I won't do that anymore. I promise I'll just change everything about me. I'll be a really, really good person. Just take this away from me. And, it was serious. When I look back and I think about that time, I feel sorry for that little boy, because he didn't know what else to do. But this is the wonderful thing I can say, and I don't want to get all religious on you and everything, and especially the non-believers listening.
Right.
I don't want to offend anybody like that, but I can just tell you that God has been really, really wonderful in my life. He took care of that for me, and he's taken care of he's taken care of everything in my life for me, right up to right now, talking with Jacob.
Well, Keltner, we're breezing along with Jim Keltner. I've got a game on this program called Name That Voice. We're going to play this, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
All righty.
About first time that you collaborated with Jim Keltner?
Yeah, I can actually. Keltner was was and is a great friend and one of the great musicians in the world, really. I think one of the greatest of his generation, certainly.
Am I supposed to break in here?
Well, I got to meet Jim we were doing a session, I can't remember for who. This is around 1973, 72, 73, 74, right in there. Can't remember the exact date. Anyway, it was at United Western, which was one of the great studios back in the day. It still exists, but by a different name. I'm not sure which. It's changed hands a few times. Anyway, we're doing a date over there, record date. I'm getting to play finally with the great Jim Keltner. I knew about him. I'd heard about him. I thought of him as a jazz drummer because he played with Charles Lloyd and Gabor Szabo and these cats doing this kind of L.A. jazz. So I always thought of him as a jazz musician. And he presents stuff. He always wears shades, and he looks really cool. And so, anyway, first time we're playing together, I hear him back there. He's behind a set of baffles. I can see him. I can just see the top part of him, from his chest up. And he's playing, but I can't really see his hands move. And then I put the phones on, and there's this incredible sound coming out. Keltner gets a sound like nobody else. And I realized, wow, I'm going into a whole other area here. Remember, I was young, and I was doing dates, but I was just kind of, this is the first 2 or 3 years of doing sessions. So Keltner, I'm playing with Keltner, and I'm doing my rhythm guitar thing that I do. And at one point he says, tells the engineer, move this baffle out of the way so I can see that guitar player. He's pointing at me.
What do you got for us, Keltner?
Oh man, that's my good buddy, one of my closest friends, Danny Korchmar.
You're playing L.A. Jazz. I love when he said L.A. Jazz, man. That's so great. That is Danny Korchmar. Danny Cooch Korchmar.
Yeah, Cooch. He's one of the hippest cats you'll ever run across, and one of the baddest guitar players ever.
What made him so? When did that dawn on you? Because he said, he goes, you were like, put the baffle down. I mean, that would have been a dream for Jake Feinberg playing piano, where Keltner's like, yo, can you lower the baffle? I want to see who that cat is.
Oh, well, I did that with Randy Newman. That's the reason why I got a chance to play on all those Randy Newman early dates, was because he Randy was known to sort of rush his time. You know, so is Jerry Lee Lewis, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in good company. But you know, Randy. I loved his music so much, and I wanted to make this work. So I figured. I said, I'll tell you what. Let me look at his hands. So they would situate him where I could see his hands, and then everything was beautiful. I could just track him. And it's the same thing with guitar, you know. With Cooch is one of the great rhythm players of all time. I mean, we came from the same era of Kool and the Gang and all of that. You know, we ate up all of that stuff, and so rhythm-wise, guitar player, you can't find any better than Danny. And I think what it was I wanted to see him play. I wanted to see what was going on connected to that sound, because it was just so good. Playing with him was just so easy. There are people like that in your life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God for those people, because it makes you still want to continue to play. There's some guitar players that I'm playing with right now, young kids that are like that, and it's just so great. You know, you got to be able to play with people that inspire you. Anyway, Danny's one of my very closest friends. He's living here now in Los Angeles.
He moved. Really?
Yeah, he moved from New York. He was here. I met him in L.A. He was a New York guy. He went back to New York. Spent a lot of years back there. Had his family back there and everything. And now he's back here. Thank goodness.
Keltner, can you talk about the first time that you met Ringo Starr?
Yeah, the first time I met Ringo was I was with George, and we were coming from someplace. I was with him. He has a meeting or something, and I was hanging with him. And he said, before we were going to go back to Henley, Friar Park, he said, "You want to meet Ringo?" And I said, "Yeah." And so we went to, I think it was Island. You know, these kinds of little things I should probably...
You mean the record label Island?
No, the studio.
The Island Studios. Got it, yeah.
I mean, but I'm not certain of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry that I don't have, you know, details.
Stop apologizing, please.
But anyway,
please stop apologizing.
It was. I think it was Island, and so you know, I'm beside myself because I'm meeting Ringo. You know, a big hero of mine at the time, because I had been recording already, making records and stuff, and I wanted to sound like Ringo. I wanted to make it feel like Ringo. I wanted to sound like Ringo. And so meeting him was really, really a thrill. And he looked just like Ringo. We were all young, you know, and at the time. And so he was dressed really cool. He had, I could just see him in my mind's eye right now, and it was fantastic. And so he said, "Hey, you want to play some maracas with me on this overdub?" And I said, "Sure." So he handed me this huge, massive maraca. I had to play it with two hands holding the handle. And he had some regular maracas he was playing. And so we shook, you know, on this song, overdub. And the song was "Don't Come Easy." And it was a hit for him. And George had written or co-wrote and produced the song for him. So that's how I met him. That was the first time I met him.
When I interviewed Pretty Purdy, you know, again, we love Bernard Purdy. I know you do too.
Yes.
I asked Purdy about there's been a lot of stuff publicized, you know, on the internet, things like that, about that he played, that he did some work on overdubs on Beatles tracks, 21 tracks. And he talked to me about it, and he said that he's just tired of talking about it because he's had his life threatened, and obviously there's a lot of fanatical people. But I'm like, you know, Keltner's, very close with Ringo, and Ringo has great job, a really great drummer. And I wanted to know from you if there was any truth to that, because
Okay, listen. Here's the thing about that. First of all, I hate the fact that there would be death threats against Bernard for something like that. I can see, there are fanatical people in the world that would do that. That's horrible, and so Bernard should not talk about it anymore. There should be no more talk of that. Just forget about it. That way I look at that. As far as him doing what he said he did, how do I know? How do any of us know? We weren't there. I don't recall ever asking George. I don't know why exactly, but I never asked George. And to tell you the truth, I've never brought the subject up with Ringo. And I'm with Ringo all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I see no reason to bring that subject up. Bernard is and will always remain one of my heroes. And I want to keep it like that. The only thing I can tell you, the only kind of light that I might be able to shed on it is the fact that, you have to remember what time that was. That was early 60s, right?
Hey, yeah, continue on.
Okay, so anyway, that was like the 60s or something, early 60s. And that was, to my knowledge, before we had the ability to replace instruments like that. Now that's the only thing that comes to my mind. I don't know. I've never talked to Bernard about it. I don't even want to talk to Bernard about it.
Right. I don't think it's even a big deal either.
I don't know how that came about. Except, and here's another little piece of light I could maybe shed on it.
Mm-hmm.
There are times when, as a studio player, especially prolific studio players like Bernard, where you are playing on so many kinds of songs for so many different kinds of artists, and you're doing so many covers. Bernard may have played on so many Beatles songs in situations that may have appeared to have been, I don't know, it could have gotten mixed up, is what I'm saying. I think that may have been what happened with Carol Kay, the great bass player.
Mm-hmm.
She claims that she played on some songs that the James Jamerson had played on. And my way of thinking on that is that, because James Jamerson is also one of my greatest heroes forever, and I got to know James when he came to L.A. James Jamerson is one of the greatest musicians ever live, jazz or otherwise. And anyway, it could be that she played on so many of those songs in so many different ways. She played for Motown a lot, and so there could be who knows how the mix-up could happen. I don't know. That's all I'm going to say, because I really don't know.
I appreciate that, Jim. Before I let you go, I just wanted you to talk about when you first did you get a chance to when you first met John Densmore? Did you see the Doors? And because you guys were both jazz fanatics.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Say that again.
Yeah. When was the first time you got to meet John Densmore?
Oh, the first time I ever met John. Oh, I can't. I'm not sure the first time. I just remember it was back in the day, and the only thing I can tell you about John is that, like everybody else, I was hearing those records, and I was knocked out by the songs, and I remember really liking the drum sound and the way he played, and at that time, their producer engineer, Bruce Botnick, was engineering most of the stuff that I was doing. Just, I don't know if it was coincidence or what it was, but hey, buddy, My grandson Charlie just walked.
Hey, we're gonna listen. It's time for we're good. We have more to do later on, Jim.
Okay.
You do your thing. Good to talk to you, man.
Yeah. Oh, so we're done.
Well, I want you to family first, man.
Oh no, it's okay. He tiptoed in here just to say hello.
Hey, Charlie, how you doing?
Hey, Jake says hi, Charlie.
Yeah.
So it's a live radio, babe. Anyway, so to finish it off real quick,
sure.
The thing is that I asked Bruce, because he was engineering the stuff that I was doing. I was doing all kind of other dates and things. So I said to Bruce one time, "Hey man, why can't you get my drums to sound like John's? On on those great Doors songs I'm hearing on the radio all the time." And he laughed and he said, "John is always telling me, why can't you get my tom-toms to sound like Keltner?" So I loved what that told me. It taught me a whole lot right then, especially about engineering, And another good thing, and I'll just say this, it's not going to be important to anybody else but drummers. There might be a few drummers listening. The thing about John Densmore's sound with the Doors back then, I can't speak for now, but the sound back then, the magic of it was that he had a really terrible drum set, apparently, and tuned really poorly as compared to the way you're supposed to tune your drums as a studio player. And so that was a great lesson for me at the time. What that meant to me was that the engineer had to have something to do. If you bring a drum set in that sounds really great already, tuned pretty and beautifully and everything, then what's he going to do? He's not going to have to work for it. So I learned a valuable lesson with that. As I say, that won't mean anything to anybody but drummers.
Why did he not want it? He didn't even realize it wasn't tuned well?
I think John had the secret. John is a very clever guy.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to ask him.
I will. No, I'm gonna talk to him again in August. But Keltner, we didn't get to the RFK story or the out of body experiences, so we covered.
We'll do that another time.
We'll do it. Hey man, listen. Much love to you. Bless you, brother, and thanks for taking the time today.
Sure.
All
sure.
Right.
Yeah, Jake. I hope it all works out good for you, and so.
Yeah, we'll keep it happening.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll keep rocking, both of us.
All right, bub. Talk to you soon.
Now.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll see you all next week with Ralph Nader. Thanks to Jackson. Take care. Peace.